The phrase separating the art from the artist gets thrown around a lot lately, and it can be hard to determine whether or not that's the right way to approach consuming art, especially in this politically charged climate. It seems that even acknowledging you are a fan of something puts a label on yourself and places you into a box with other people you might not even identify with. There's a case to be made on whether an artist's identity or life matters when it comes to their art, so let's talk about it. The first and most obvious example is none other than Kanye West. There is not one person who will argue he hasn't gone off the deep end. Well, no other person besides me. I am of the belief that he has always been crazy, and the craziness is what made him successful. The deep end is where he started, and from the earliest point in his career, you had incidents of him being outrageous or making inflammatory remarks. But back then, the public forgave him even when things he did crossed so many lines. I couldn't say whether it was because his art was that good or people didn't see the things he did as bad. Unfortunately, he got so big and influential that he thought it was okay to share his insane beliefs with the world. When he made anti-Semitic remarks, they were first in regard towards things that happened to him in the past regarding his label management. Then he retracted those statements after watching 21 Jump Street starring Jonah Hill. But soon after, he was back at it, eventually leading up to his summer anthem HH. Recently, he's once again said he's done with anti-Semitism, but who knows how long that will last. Kanye is a good example for this discussion because he still has so many diehard fans, a good portion of which will never leave his side. Some will make up excuses saying he's merely a pathological contrarian and will say anything it takes to be perceived as an outsider or an underdog. Some say art shouldn't have any limits whatsoever, and to impose limits on art is to obstruct the freedom of speech. One thing that I'm interested in exploring is if it's okay to listen to art that was created before the big crash out. I would argue yes, simply because it is something that occurred in the past before the events that made us no longer identify as fans. But that's not the only thing you can factor in. To go further on this train of thought, we must look at J.K. Rowling. The Harry Potter series is beloved by many, especially by those who had their childhoods in the 90s and 2000s. The cultural force that was the books and movies was simply inescapable. The only thing as big at the time was maybe The Lord of the Rings, but that was only 3 movies. There was something within the Harry Potter franchise that really resonated with younger audiences. We were seeing a familiar setting become something absolutely magical, and the symbolism contained within these stories was and still is something not seen within young adult fiction. Jungian tropes of untamed creatures lurking in the darkest places, love being the ultimate magic of them all, uncovering deep truths not meant for the uninitiated. These stories really seem to stand for something great. There's a whole civil rights storyline about the house elves in the books that doesn't even get touched on in the movies. Unfortunately, all these forward-thinking themes seem to not be understood by the creator, as J.K. Rowling came out as a TERF, that is, trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Basically, she believes that women's position in society is undermined by giving the same rights and provisions to trans women. Currently, in the year 2025, this is still a hotly debated issue. I don't want to get into it since that's not the point of the video, but basically most progressives, including me, believe in rights for trans women and trans people in general. A large amount of her fan base is made up of progressives, and as you can imagine, we're upset by her stance on the matter. Now, while the books are great and a shining example of the timeless lessons that should be taught to children and young adults, people will make the argument that you are directly funding a shitty person and enabling them to continue spreading their hateful rhetoric by giving them resources to fund their campaigns. Much like how no raindrop feels responsible for a flood, it's hard for an individual to feel like they're directly attached to one person's platforming through buying a product, especially since there's so much in between you buying the thing and them getting a percentage of what you paid. It's not like J.K. Rowling is directly involved in the development of every Harry Potter branded project. There are teams of people whose livelihood is reliant on the creation of these products. There's artists, actors, game designers, fashion designers, middle management, office grunts, custodians, all tied up in the Harry Potter franchise. Rowling, from the ephemera, brought forth something huge and beneficial to many people, so to me it seems unfair that it should all end because of one person's shitty opinion. But either way, I don't think Harry Potter can be boycotted out of existence. It's too big and there's too much financial interest behind it. It's like Star Wars, a borderline religion, with hardcore zealots. At the end of the day, if you hate Kanye and J.K. Rowling, I genuinely don't think it makes a difference if they're influential and have resources or not. They just happen to be in the media spotlight promoting these ideas. There are much larger forces at work behind the scenes pushing legislation and propaganda through mainstream and independent media. These greater, more terrible powers can even be funded by organizations that gain money through things me and you have no choice in buying. As horrible as that all sounds, at the end of the day, and maybe this sounds naive, I think the right thing always wins. Reality cannot allow allow for oppression to continue indefinitely because oppression needs order for it to really work. And within any ordered system, chaos always occurs due to the law of entropy. So it goes like this. Things get oppressive, people don't have rights, then people rise up and force change to occur so they can take their rights. Sometimes the opposite happens, but once the people have gotten used to having certain civil liberties, it's extremely hard to take them away again. Unless you make them dumb by defunding education and then scare them by making them believe their lives are in danger from foreign invaders, distracting them long enough so billionaires can steal from the government and the people at the same time. But everyone is born with free will, and when that becomes stifled or controlled, people start waking up and showing force. Even animals defend the right to be here. If you have a dog and you try to move them from the spot they're sitting, you will physically feel their will battling against yours when you nudge them. Anyway, all of this is to say that you are free to consume things however you want. Vote with your wallet or just take in whatever appeals to you. In the long run, the larger problems get fixed because there are always people there to fight for the cause and take tangible, effective actions toward a better future. If people want to judge you for what you like, then it's still up to you whether you want to take that into account or not. This is not me saying it's cool to listen to songs like HH or any other hateful creation. I definitely don't advocate for that. That's art that's bad at its core, and to me there's only the substance of the work. I only care about the art itself. The person who made it can be interesting for providing context to the piece, but I think most great art speaks for itself. The wider world outside of it falls away eventually, slotted into an adjacent category of history while the art itself remains standing, if it's truly worthy. That's what I honestly believe. Maybe it's not the most politically correct position, or maybe I'm being a bad ally, but I do think good art can be channeled through shitty people, as much as shitty art can be channeled through good people, because morals and creativity are two separate things. I think there's very creative people working for Lockheed Martin and Boeing who are basically saying, I'll create efficient weapons of death if you give me a salary. The nuclear bomb was an ingenious idea by brilliant scientists, but nobody wanted to acknowledge the price that would be paid for basically giving the US a gun to point at and threaten other countries with. The arms race had real artists since the beginning of time. You cannot look at a cult single-action army and tell me it's not a work of art. I guess I just see the world like a big cosmic balance board game, where one side can't be winning for too long or things get uncomfortable. But I'm getting way off topic. Do whatever you want. I'm not the moral police or even the voice of reason. I'm more of a follow your bliss type person. Life is too short to be worrying about what celebrity is a feminist or if a corporation loves you. As long as you are a good person to the people who appear in your life, then that's what matters. Bye-bye.